Hi, everyone. Rich Berliner here from the In-Building Wireless Association with our first podcast. And I'm really pleased to have Christian Rouffaert from Teragence on with me today to talk about what Teragence does, because I think it's a really interesting product for the audience that we're talking with, which is real estate in-building wireless folks of all shapes and sizes. And so, Christian, welcome. Thank you for being with me today.
Thank you, Rich, for inviting me. And, thank you for the honor of kicking off the podcast series. I'm really, really excited to be here. Thank you.
Good. Me too. I'm glad to have you. So, Christian, you've got a really interesting company, a really interesting set of products. But I want to break down before we get into that a little bit about how you got here. So, give us some background on you and on Teragence and how you picked that name and how the company developed.
Okay. All right. Well, I could fill a half an hour with that, but I'll try to keep it compact. So my name is Christian Rouffaert. I've been living and working in the UK for most of my adult life. I actually have what people describe as probably a mid-Atlantic accent because I spent one formative year in Kansas City, Missouri, as an exchange student. So I have a great love for all things American and Midwestern, actually. But to come back, most of my adult life, I worked in the UK in London, and I've been working in telecoms in various guises and forms. I think I probably went through all the elements of the telecom value chain at one stage or the other. I started out in fixed fiber networking, optical networking. I then moved into data centers. I worked in mobile, in equipment vendors, and so forth and so on. And I think across those roles, I was a little bit the jack of all trades and master of none. So the guy that kind of understands the engineering, that understands the commercials, and that usually floats somewhere between product management and finance or strategy or something like that. Anyways, my last proper job was working with Accenture, working as a management consultant, and seeing mainly working into the mobile industry and seeing how that industry was evolving. I think the other strand in my career till date was that I'm at heart a data nerd. I love nothing more than a big spreadsheet or a big database and pivoting and querying and getting aggregate insights out of that data. That's how I added value. And a few years ago, I mean, we're talking now several years ago, you come at this crossroads in your career where you go, okay, either I continue being a corporate warrior or I go and do something else. Some people decide that they want to buy a motorcycle and get a new wife. I decided that I wanted to be a startup bro and wear a vest to work and have, a foosball table and all that. And I want to become a startup bro and not a corporate drone with Accenture. So I kind of jacked out of that life and I started a company, Teragence. The story of its name is actually quite funny because we came to it in a very naive way, in saying, it'll be terabytes of intelligence, but Teragence with 2 R's was taken. So we dropped 1 R and that became Teragence.
So terabyte of intelligence is where this comes from.
Yes.
I gotcha.
It's, some of the brand origin stories are always a bit either very, very inspiring or very pedestrian. So I think this one is probably a bit more pedestrian, but there you go.
Yeah, well, though the important thing on those, it makes sense. Is sometimes you get too fancy with these things. It doesn't make any sense. This makes sense.
Yes, and it's not like one of those weird words that is inoffensive in any language, and
Right.
that you pay branding consultants $500,000 for it to come up with something. It wasn't one of those. So we started that, and it was built around 2 or 3 core principles. So the first core principle was that we wanted to do something around data. And so we did that around data of how mobile networks work. And we wanted to collect that data in large volumes and everywhere possible. And the traditional way of doing that is to send out somebody with what I call a measuring stick or a measuring device, collect some data, look at 20 or 30 data points on a map and go, okay, there's something there, or there's information there. We wanted to turn that on its head and collect, information at a giga scale, literally. So we came up with this idea of crowdsourcing data. And crowdsourcing in mobile has been around for quite a while. The traditional way of doing that is you create an app that does network testing. You convince people to download that app, to push a button on that app, and every time they push a button, a data point is created, which is then harvested in the background, and some information is derived from that. We turned that idea on its head, and we said, instead of creating our own app, we will partner with app vendors that operate already in the market, specifically app vendors with location-enabled apps. So we're talking about navigation, weather apps, find the nearest McDonald's apps. All those apps have a location component in them. And what is really interesting is that when they take a location read, they also take a read of the mobile network they connect to. And we collect that data in the background in partnership with those app vendors. We are very, very careful to be privacy respecting, right? So we are not, looking to find, target people with advertising or anything like that. We just collect, data about network X, AT&T, Verizon, T-Mo in this location was of nature Y, right? A very compact data set. And no individual targeting. Anyways, so that enables us to collect lots of data everywhere, on which we can then apply some data cleverness, whether you call that analytics, machine learning, AI. In a sense, they're all kind of evolutions and generations of how you treat and work with the data to get what we call data insights or products. So that's kind of like, working with data at scale, focus number one. Focus number two is that we didn't target, and that was a bit of a pivot, that we don't work directly with the mobile operators and the regulators, which are the traditional markets for this kind of information. Our hypothesis was that in the ecosystem around those big whales, there was actually quite a big shoal of fish, of smaller scale players, but still very large. But in compared to a mobile operator or to a regulator, many more of smaller sizes that had an interest in knowing about mobile networks in specific locations. So our target market is not so much the big whales, it's the shoal of fish that kind of swims around that in that ecosystem.
Which is perfect considering the audience that we have of real estate people and interested vendors and integrators in the in-building wireless space. So this couldn't be more perfect. You've got peanut butter, we've got chocolate, and we're putting that together. And so I think that couldn't be more perfect in this situation. So you also mentioned something before that I wanted to touch on before we move on, is that I was talking to one of the other speakers that will be at our event. We're doing an event. Thank you. You are one of the sponsors of that event coming up in February 10th in Fort Lauderdale, called the Winter Sunshine AI Data and Connectivity event. And one of the speakers there is a fellow named John Gilbert from Nantum AI. And we got into a discussion about something you just said, whether you call it machine learning or AI. And so it seems to me, and you can opine on this, but it seems to me that the discussion of machine learning has now kind of morphed into nobody talking about those terms anymore. Everyone's calling it AI. You see that the same way?
Yeah, that's quite an interesting one. I get a little bit annoyed when people talk about AI and they say, oh, it's Chat GPT and you can ask things of it. And it's very cool. I do it a lot myself. And if I have to write a piece of code, thank the Lord for Chat GPT and Claude.
Right.
But at its core, it's still a mathematical discipline. If you want to derive information from a set of data, it's still machine learning. You can't just throw it at Chat GPT and say, tell me what this means for that. It's still, so yeah, we kind of use the terms because people understand them, but
They're not interchangeable, is what you're saying.
In our nature, we're numbers geeks, and we kind of like to get the numbers right and get the terminology right. So so they are, in our mind, there are different things. They are not all, chat GPT or make yourself a funny picture of a mouse dancing on a cheese on the top of Mount Everest, whatever, right? That you do in these image generation things. But we like the kind of mathematical, statistical, big data underpinnings and the evolution of that.
Right. So let's get to the sort of the meat and potatoes here, is that you've taken all the things you just described, you've got that crowdsourced data, and now you've created a product. And yesterday I ran my building here in New Jersey, the indoor signal checker. And tell us about that product, because our audience is dying for something like that, because they need to talk to building owners about their in-building signals. And so tell us about that product.
Yeah, I think it's a pretty cool product, and I'm glad that you're so enthusiastic about it. So the high level concept is this: you select any building, let's call it in Europe and North America and a few places beyond that, and you say, I want to know what the indoor signal strength is for AT&T, Verizon, and T-Mo in that building. Until recently, the only way of finding out was going into that building, sticking up your phone and reading what it said and doing that. And it's costly and time consuming. So we use the crowdsourced data and a bit of algorithmic cleverness to say, you select a building, you click go on our software, and 10, 20 seconds later, we will tell you not only what the average signal strength is in that building, we'll tell you the propagation. So whether the northwest corner is better than the southeast corner, and we will tell you what our confidence is, what our algorithm tells about how confident we are in that data. So we always provide a number, and we always provide a summary insight about how we got to that number and what our level of confidence is in that. And it's pretty cool, right? You literally go onto a map, you type in the address, you click the building shape on the map, hit run, and the report spits out on the other side. And our hypothesis was that this was indeed a very, very powerful proposition in the real estate space, right? There is a lot of information out there that says, if you want to rent your building to Morgan Stanley, or if Morgan Stanley wants to rent a building, it better have good mobile coverage inside, right? And that drives 5-10% increase in rental yield all by itself. So building owners, real estate buyers, sellers, that space, it's a big one. The second one is, of course, the whole space of people selling indoor solutions, whether it's DaaS solutions or repeater solutions. Where do you target your sales force, right? And one of the things that I learned in Accenture is you could have two attitudes of a management consultant. The first one is to walk up to a client and say, tell me something about your business. I'm really interested. And that was a non-starter. Or you could go to a customer and go, in your business, we see these three things. So if you can go to a prospect and say, hey, we looked at your building and we think that things are pretty dire with Verizon in the northwest corner of your building. Would you like a solution? That turns the sales conversation from, no, go away, you're annoying me, to like, how the hell did you know that? And yes, it is a problem. Can we have a chat? Yep. So that drives up your sales conversion effectiveness by multiple tens of percentages, which is huge.
Well, you kind of took a piece I was going to add and put my sales hat on and kind of do my pitch, but you just covered it. Look, I've done some analysis on your building, and I'm here to tell you exactly what the analysis showed. And now I'm in a much better position to talk to you about selling you on a solution that my company can provide. I think that's killer for any of the integrators or any of the managed service providers in our business. And so one of the things that really touched me, and you and I kidded about this before, about the movie Glengarry Glen Ross, about having the leads. And so the bottom line is that if you go into a pitch armed with this data, it seems to me like you're so much further ahead than you were if you just walked in cold. And the second piece of it is, and I wanted to stress this to people watching, that you've offered for people who will be sponsoring at our event in Fort Lauderdale on February 10th, the ability to take any 5 buildings that they'd like and do this analysis for them for free. And then they can then choose to have a subscription past those 5 buildings and use this as a sales tool. But what a kind thing for you to offer people to give them an understanding of how important a tool this could really be.
Yeah, and it is our pleasure to work with you on that, Rich. But you're absolutely right. And what we're finding is that when we tell that story, people go, yeah, it's almost too good to believe, right? It's almost too magical. And we go, no, look, test it. In the UK, we say kick the tires on the car that you're buying, right? Take it for a spin and see how good it is, because we're confident that you will come back and buy more things, which also ties to yeah. Go ahead.
My understanding, Christian, too, is that they're one of the things that I think would be an objection here to you would be, oh, this has got to be so expensive because you've got all this data and you spent all this time and effort getting it. But this is a very reasonably priced opportunity for people, as I understand it, from what you're looking for in a sort of a subscription model. Am I right or am I wrong?
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right, because that's also one of the key factors of our business model, that we sell things in bite size. You don't need to spend $500,000. We'd love you to spend $500,000 with us. Great, but you can also spend $5,000 with us. We'll take that. And so the way that we sell our service is very much pay as you go. You say, I want to do 100 buildings or 500 buildings or 50 buildings. You pay for that, and then you consume it, and then you top up again. That gives them the confidence that they don't have to subscribe to this massive contract that they might regret. We don't think they will, right, but we understand. So you say, okay, spend $5,000-$10,000 with us, get started, and then you can see whether you like it or not. And that starts at about a unit cost per building of about $200 per building, and then we work our way down
like
from there.
That sounds like a really inexpensive opportunity. Because there are services out there that'll tell you the name of the owner and other information, but there's subscription models that you've got to book for a long period of time and you can't get out of. And so this seems like a bite size, being able to buy on a bite size basis seems like a great thing for people.
Yeah, absolutely. And what we see is that people start with those bite-sized, what we call pay-as-you-go or pay-as-you-use contracts. And after 2 or 3 iterations, they go, okay, we now have the confidence in this tool. We understand how it works. We like it. We think we want to use X amount every month and every week. And then we say, okay, let's talk about an annual contract. Because my investors, of course, like, recurring monthly contracts. So that's where we can get to. But if you're not comfortable with that, stay with the pay as you go, and that works equally fine. I think the last thing that we would say is, what is also important is that the data output that we create does not exist in isolation. One of my pet annoyances when I was an analyst or a data analyst was to have systems that produce beautiful graphs, but yet that you couldn't get behind the data itself to correlate it with whatever. So our data perfectly integrates into any other system. So we can visualize it into any other system. We can transpose it into any other system to a very simple API. So if you have a system where you want to bring together the ownership data, the architectural value, the environmental characteristics, and then the data about the internal mobile coverage, that will just slot in perfectly into your own system. So it's, I have a profound dislike of copy paste. So yeah, we built all our systems to go, if you have a system and it's more or less modern, this will slot right back in, and it will help you create that overall view.
So we've nerded out a little bit, as you're using your terminology, as a data nerd. And so I'm the stone cold sales guy looking at this saying, gee, if I had this information, I'd be able to go and make some incredible pitches to people. So I really like this concept and how it fits together with all of the people in the industry now that are really desperate to get out there and be able to talk effectively with building owners. So I've heard some scuttlebutt that maybe we can hopefully see you in the U.S. for the Fort Lauderdale event. And I'm hoping that you will be there because I think people are going to want to pick your brain and really talk this through. But in the meantime, we will certainly give them the opportunity to choose 5 buildings as if they choose to sponsor with us. In addition to that, I will make sure that people have an opportunity to be able to find out how to get a Teragence subscription and find you. And so we will do that as part of this podcast and provide that information for them. Anything else you'd like to add before we end this? I think, the opportunity to do podcasts is great, but people have an attention span that's limited to watch these things. So I want to be time efficient. So anything else you'd like to add here that people should know about this?
Yeah, I think one of the things that we find is that very often people come to us and say, "Oh, this is very interesting, but I need something that looks a bit different, or I need to have a different perspective." And we're always keen to hear customer feedback and act upon it, because being good data nerds, we can always go, "Well, we think that is possible," and that's the thrill that I get as an entrepreneur, because we created something that people said, "But you would have to have so much data, and it's impossible, and then you would have to crunch all this data. It's impossible." And I go, I think we can do it. And that's our spirit, right? If there's a crazy idea out there, we can probably do it if we can put our minds to it. And well, that's where the opportunity is.
Here's a crazy idea that I think people are going to want to pick up on. We're going to cut this piece up at the end. If you're someone in the industry that's looking to build towers, you have other products that you can look at where there is a lack of coverage for certain carriers. And that is a different product. So tell us a little bit about that and how someone who's looking to build some towers for the carriers might go about finding locations.
Yeah, so that is indeed, one of the other niches and our other products that we have, which is, not only can we map out the indoor coverage, we can also map out the outdoor coverage across pretty much any location using the same principles. That enables us to identify coverage not spots or weak spots, or capacity coverage and not spots and weak spots. And then we can do all kinds of simulations. We can say, okay, are there any structures nearby that could be served from this location?
Unbelievably helpful.
Yes, it is. It is. And so we bring together all that geospatial information, like where is the signal? Where are the people? Where is the traffic? Where are the towers? And what would happen if you would put something here? Or what would happen if suddenly a building shoots up here and blocks the signal from those towers? So those extensive simulations, digital twin, whatever you want to call it, that's really our bread and butter. And my guys always, I see them looking when I come home from a customer pitch, and I go, I have a new idea. This is how we are going to do it. They're equally thrilled and scared, because they go, yeah, he's come back with another idea. But that's the force of our team, that we can do that, and we have built these really, really cool things that address all those.
Now you're going to have the companies that are integrators in the in-building space, the managed service providers. Now you're going to have the guys that are looking to build towers out there lining up to talk to Teragence. And that, I think Teragence is a name that many more people are going to be talking about in the industry after they see this. So, Christian, thank you so much for being with me today. Again, I'm going to, in the nicest way possible, try and arm twist you to come and visit with us in Fort Lauderdale on February 10th for the winter sunshine AI data and connectivity event that we're running. And so I look forward to seeing all of those of you watching this, and you, Christian, to be with us in Fort Lauderdale. Let me tell you, Fort Lauderdale in February does not stink. It's a great place, and it's a great place to be when you need to thaw out and get your joints moving again if you've experienced the big winter. So,
and I heard the business is not too bad either, but we will definitely be there, as in we as a company, whether it be myself or our team members in the US, but we will definitely be there.
Gotcha. So we've been talking with Christian Rouffaert from Teragence today. Christian, thank you so much for being with me. Good hunting and good luck with that. And we've got to watch Glenn Ross together one of these days.
Yes, we do.
When you're in the US. Thank you again. Rich
Thank you,
Berliner
Rich.
from the In-Building Wireless Association. Thank you for watching, everyone. And Christian, thank you for being with us.
Cheers, Rich.